Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator. And today we are going to be taking a look at both the good and the bad of World Update 6. So stick around, guys. If you are interested in acquiring my Overkill's Cessna Citation Longitude guide from Microsoft Flight Simulator, consider joining my Patreon site at level tier 2 or above. That's $10 or more, which will give you access to all of the Overkill tutorial guides. Please keep in mind with Patreon, you do not have to subscribe each and every month. Once you subscribe, you will be charged $10. You will have access to all of the guides, and if you wish, you can then cancel the subscription, and you will maintain access to Patreon until the first of the following month. So, with that in mind, let's talk about what this guide is. This guide gives you a full flight tutorial from Boston to Minneapolis. It also walks you through installing any modifications that I use for this aircraft, a full cockpit tutorial, breaking down how to create your flight plan using SimBrief, which is a free service, and then completing the flight successfully. If there are any questions, you're always welcome to give feedback, as joining my Patreon site gives you access to my Discord channel as well, giving you direct access and communication to me. So once again, if you guys are interested, please consider joining the Patreon. It definitely helps support the channel and keeps the content coming, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Alright, so jumping right into it, the first thing we're going to do is go over some highlight points of the release notes. That way you guys can sort of get where I'm going to be going over with this particular video. Okay, so jumping right into this here, obviously the first one, big one, several crashes have been fixed across the title. That doesn't mean all of them, but definitely some of them. Now I'm just going to go through the key ones that really struck out to me here. So let's move on down here. The title can now be launched in safe mode. Now, there are a couple of caveats to this. First off, or actually only one caveat, really. Well, no, there's two. Two caveats: PC only, and dev mode cannot be enabled. So if you use dev mode and you get a crashed desktop, you will not be able to relaunch it in safe mode. Now, for those of you going, what the heck is safe mode? Safe mode will launch the simulator in its absolute base installation, meaning that anything in your marketplace directories or anything in your community folder will not be loaded. You will be loading the simulator in its absolutely base installation and only the base installation. So again, anything from the marketplace, anything that you have in your community folder will be ignored. Now, where this comes into a very handy tool to at least begin troubleshooting crashed desktops is that you will immediately be able to rule out anything in the marketplace or the community folder, assuming that when you launch it in safe mode, the simulator runs perfectly fine without any issue whatsoever. If you take it out of safe mode and it crashes again, you know it's something from the marketplace or from the community folder. So that is helpful. I would still like to hopefully see something very much more detailed in the future. It'd be nice to get an actual crash log, it'd be nice to be able to see something that says error loading Denver scenery or something to that effect that actually tells you where specifically to look. I'm still blown away there isn't one there, but I don't want to get a tangent, so I'll move on down. Okay, so I'm just going over the ones again that really caught my attention. Fixed ATC radar altitude, so ATC no longer asks you to change your altitude when it is not applicable. This means if you were assigned to fly at flight level 310 and your aircraft is at flight level 310, you will no longer hear ATC tell you to expedite your climb to flight level 310 because you're already there. So hopefully this is true and that has truly been fixed across the board. I believe, don't quote me, but I do believe that this was the second time that quote-unquote a fix for this has been applied. So we'll see what happens. Now, one of my things that I will always give Microsoft Flight Simulator that I think is an absolutely wonderful perk is that they update the AirAC cycles. They are, as far as I'm aware, they are the only flight simulator that does this. And guys, for anyone who doesn't understand, let's talk about a couple things. First, what is the AirAC cycle? The AirAC cycle is what we use for IFR flights. They are very specific routes in the sky. Much like we have our freeways and roadways down on the ground, they are the freeways and roadways up in the air. They are very specific routes that aircraft travel when flying instrument flight rules. They are used to both keep traffic separation, keep aircraft separated, as well as, heaven forbid, something goes wrong. Search and rescue has an idea of where to look based on what the aircraft's path of flight was designated to be. Now, the thing about these air racks, these airways, I should say, is they change based on airports closing, airports opening, just maybe an over-congested area and they need to make modifications. Each month, these air rack cycles go through changes. And in order to fly the most up-to-date real-world route, we must have the air rack cycle updated in the simulator. In other versions of simulators, you have to pay for a Navigraph subscription in order to get this of, I believe, if memory serves, a minimum of $10 per month. That's $10 US. And then you have to have an installation tool of some sort to actually install that air rack cycle into the sim. So guys, they are saving you $10 every single month if you do not already have a Navigraph subscription. So, something cool to think about. Another one that really caught my attention, I was asked multiple times to try to help with this, and I never was able to offer any solutions because I don't own the hardware, but I have seen this question brought up many times. Fix the Engine 1 and the Crank Mode Norm Ignition Start buttons on the Thrustmaster TCA Quadrant Airbus Edition. There was an issue in the simulator where this was not registering, and people could not use that rotary in order to start the engine. So, looks like that's been fixed. So, that's always good news. The other big one that really caught my attention, and pay attention for this one because we're going to be taking a close look at this, is off-screen terrain pre-caching. Off-terrain pre-caching, it means that anything that is not actively in front of your face, anything that is not on the screen, your scenery, looking at the left or right or behind the aircraft, assuming you're looking at the front windshield, that data will be pre-cached, meaning that when you turn your head, that imagery is already loaded into your hard drive. Or stored in active memory, I'm willing to bet, but I'm not sure on that. But you would simply every time you turn your head, that imagery is already there, which will make the turning of your head and the changing of scenery on your monitor much more seamless, and should keep your FPS at a much more stable number when we turn our heads and look around. And we'll take a further look at that later on. However, pay attention to this next part. If set to Ultra, all the off-screen terrain will be cached at at full quality, which will reduce FPS drops and level of detail popping when panning the camera, but may impact overall performance. So again, as we turn our head, you won't see any weird, last-minute details popping into the scenery like we see sometimes, and your FPS, like I said, should be far more stable. But if you have a lower end computer or maybe a computer that struggles a little bit, you may see a reduction in overall performance, meaning that your overall FPS, though it is stable, may be lower than what you're used to. So, and we'll take a further look at that in a little bit. Maximum photogrammetry draw distance has been further increased. This means those high-level detailed buildings and windmills and things like that are out in the area should be visible at a much further distance, therefore enhancing some of the immersion, which is always a good thing. Nothing weirder than watching something randomly pop up in front of you that wasn't there 2 seconds ago at close range. Let's see here. There's a couple of these that I'll let you guys read through these ones here. They don't really impact me, so I'm sort of at a loss for those. Let's see here. Yep, I have tested this already for you guys. The title no longer crashes when quitting the sim in VR. So, I mean, you sort of got the same result no matter what, but what used to happen is if you were actively in virtual reality and you went to the desktop or went to the main menu and hit quit to desktop, instead of closing down properly, the sim would actually crash. Which it shouldn't. So, that was fixed and it actually closes properly now. The thing about anytime you get a crash at desktop, you do run the risk of file corruption. So it is best to have it shut down properly. Let's see here, a couple of tutorial fixes. I'll let you guys read through that. Content user rating is now more accurate. This is a big one for me from the marketplace. So, and in my personal opinion, this one was actually, it should have been addressed a long time ago. What this is basically saying is that the content user rating previous to this was not so accurate, meaning that it would show you that the user rating of, let's say it was a scenery, and it shows it as 5 stars. That may not have actually been true. It may have been 2 or 3 stars. And in my opinion, if that reading is not accurate even to this day, it shouldn't be there then. If you're going to throw in a user rating, it either needs to be accurate or you need to take it out. That's just my thoughts, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that from your end. And then optional world update content via the sim marketplace. I'll let you guys again just sort of peruse through these as we scroll down. Bunch of different sceneries and locations. Feel free to pause as I'm scrolling down here. But a ton of them, which is always good. I mean, I'm not going to knock them ever for this. I just hope we get the performance along with it. That's all I ask for. I love the scenery. I love all the new features, but performance above features, in my opinion. Performance above scenery. Okay, so there's the release notes. Let's jump in and see what we've got going on. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is go to General Options. And I want you guys to be able to see what's going on here. So obviously we have dev mode enabled. We have our FPS counter up, as you guys saw earlier. And we are basically at Ultra. I'm going to show you guys what we have here. So it shows custom here. And that's because I set it to Ultra, and then I reduced terrain level of detail to 100, objects level of detail to 100, and then I disabled depth of field and motion blur. And I also set the glass cockpit refresh rate to high, which by default on Ultra, this is actually set to medium. And actually, let's go ahead and kick it down to medium. Let's just change that because I have already noticed a performance decrease with that. Now, the other thing that you want to pay attention here is our off-screen terrain pre-caching. I want to explain how this works first. Okay, so you can decide what setting you want to do this on. Now, even though I have everything else on Ultra, right? Terrain vector data, buildings, trees, grass, clouds, you name it, right? Texture resolution. I can still kick this down to all the way down to low if I want, okay? So what this does here is if we set this to low, is the imagery around our peripheral and behind the aircraft, right? Anything that's not within our monitor's boundaries will be pre-rendered at a low resolution. Now, because I have everything on Ultra, when I turn my head, what will essentially happen is that everything will still have to be rendered a little bit more, right? It'll have to still be rendered up to that Ultra setting. The same thing if I set it on medium, then everything will be pre-cached at medium, but when I turn my head, it'll have to be polished up to the Ultra, right? So by leaving it Ultra, there's no change that's necessary, but we're going to take an FPS hit overall because of the lack of resources that are available to, to the simulator at that time. Obviously, pre-caching at a low resolution is going to free up resources on the CPU and the GPU because it's going to be able to do it much faster. But if you have a strong enough GPU and CPU, shouldn't be an issue. I have noticed very, very minor. So I'll tell you what. Well, let's set this to low for now, so we can see what the difference is. That actually take there it goes. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump in here, and we are just past JFK. So this is New York. And let's go ahead and turn the aircraft around. And you can see the frame rates, they change a little bit, but nothing too crazy. Now, the reason why it goes real high up here is because there isn't anything that we're looking at. We're looking at sky. There isn't any terrain. There isn't any object. You will always find that if your frame rate is tanking, look up at the sky, and you'll see that it smooths way out until you start looking back down at the terrain again. Now, I wanted to show you guys what I'm wanting to show you here is that you can see 37 to 40, all right? Now, let's get back in here again, and let's set it up on high. Or Ultra, excuse me. And hit apply. There it goes. Really not a significant change, which tells me this is either almost strictly CPU or definitely a CPU-GPU mix. But and anyone who has any doubt or questions about my hardware specifications, those can be found down in the description below. Nothing has changed, so it's all still current. But the biggest thing is, notice how smooth the transition is. There isn't any stuttering, there isn't any lag, there isn't any weird popping or freezing that it used to do very briefly. It just turns. And that is going to be the advantage of that terrain caching, okay, or that off-screen terrain caching, right? Is that even though I'm looking over here, everything that's looking out the passenger side window is pre-rendered for me, so that way when I turn my head, the image is already done, it's already rendered. It's just a matter of selecting that picture and off we go. So that should be a very nice FPS stabilizer. I would not say that it is going to increase your FPS. Please do not expect that. Based on the very nature of what it's doing, it should not increase your FPS. Honestly, the higher you set it, if you have a lower end machine or maybe a mid-range machine, you may actually see it drop a little bit, but this number should be more consistent. That's what you're looking for with the off-screen terrain caching. You should get a more consistent FPS, not necessarily a higher FPS. Okay, so now let's talk about a few other things going on with my simulator right now and see how you guys compare. Okay, stepping into the world map, one of the biggest things that used to stick me here was zooming in and out. Now I just zoomed in, and we're just going to jump in. Like one of my, for example, let me back up here a second. I do want to let you guys also know that all of my mods, all of the scenery that I use, it's all installed. This is not a default version of Microsoft Flight Simulator. My TBM 930 is here. The A320 is here. The Vertigo is here. Any aircraft that I purchased is installed. Any scenery that I use third party, this Cottonwood Airport is actually one of them. We're going to dive down on it in just a second. It is a third party scenery I got from FlightSim.2. It is installed. And one of the biggest things that used to almost always cause crash of desktops for me was doing this. Zooming in. When I zoomed in rapidly, if I did not slowly zoom in, it would almost 99% of the time it would crash to the desktop. That seems to have been resolved, which I'm very happy to see. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to throw the aircraft down here on a ramp because I want to show you guys another thing that seems to have been resolved for me as well with the TBM 930. Alright, so jumping right into it, we're going to hit ready to fly. I'm going to go to my overhead camera. I'm going to flip those batteries on, the generator on, and very commonly by this point, you guys, I would have crashed already. A previous issue that I was having with the TBM 930 using the Mixmugs TBM 930 performance modification and the working title G3000 and the working title GX is installed as well. What would happen is as soon as I hit that fly button, if I did not just sit here for a second with a cold and dark aircraft and went immediately to the battery and flipped it on, my game would crash. Again, 9 times out of 10. Where now it is very smooth, very seamless. I don't notice any issues. There isn't any lag or hesitation at the time that I flip that switch. So that is a good sign. And I'm hoping that you guys are seeing a lot of the same things. Now, one thing I do want to touch on real quick on is I want to show you guys that, where are you? Before I did my update, I did this. Community.old. Okay, I removed my any of my community folder add-ons, and I literally just renamed it. At first I used add-ons linker to remove what I could, okay, but just to show you guys here, anything with a green line or a check mark is installed. Okay, so if we go to aircraft, there's the G36, the Salty 747, the JP Logistics 152, the Airbuses, helicopters, the Vertigo. All of these are currently installed. There's our TBM 930 improvement mod, and we can verify that by going to the correct community folder, and this is everything that's installed. Like, there's a bunch of mods and add-ons that are installed right now, and it's running flawlessly right now. I have ran the sim for a total of 1 hour so far, non-stop, just flying around the general areas, Las Vegas, Phoenix, the cities, and haven't had any crashes. I'm not seeing any increase in RAM usage on the simulator. So as far as I can tell, I'm not seeing any indication of a memory leak, which is a great thing. I think my biggest gripe that I would be concerned with here is if you look at the scenery, it's very grainy, and I'm wondering if that's something that we're going to be able to adjust again. I mean, look at this. Like right here, that may be concrete, and I mean there are concrete overhangs, it's possible, but it just looks weird. Like it's a beautiful picture with a layer of sand over the top of it. So that's probably my only complaint thus far with the simulator. As far as I can tell, guys, this has been a win. Now, obviously, just like with Sim Update 5, just like with 4, it doesn't matter. Experience is going to vary. Mileage is going to vary. You guys are going to run into issues. We're going to have to still crash the desktops, but hopefully some more options. Yeah, look at, you can see sort of almost like, you know what it is? It's like a screen door effect that you would see in VR. That's what I'm looking at. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Let me know if you guys are having any trouble. Please, by all means, remember that as of now, our Discord is open to the public, so feel free to join the Discord. There should be a link down in the description below to give you guys access. And if not, just shoot me an email by all means at overkillsimulations@gmail.com. Let me know if I can help you guys. I'll be more than happy to do whatever I can, just like I did last time. What is that? It is a light that is missing. I guarantee it. We have a light that is in the wrong spot. Remember, this is a custom map. This airport is custom. So that's probably a bug with that. I don't think that's related to the simulator. Anyway, I digress again. Weird aircraft shadows too. Look at that. Let's dive down on that. See, these are things that I always pick up on after the fact. Okay, so just out of range. Anyway, so things like that, guys. You know, let me know what you guys' experience are. Be sure to walk through the steps. It's super important to make sure that you guys walk through your steps correctly. Before you run the update, make sure that you rename your community folder or just delete it. Make sure that you remove any of your add-ons from add-ons link here. Unfortunately, the marketplace, if you have the time, but I mean, you'd have to launch the simulator, and if it works the way it's supposed to, you're going to be prompted to update no matter what. So you can't do a whole lot about the marketplace. But then on the flip side to that, the other thing I want you guys to do is to make sure you restart your computer. Restarting your computer will force a reset of the Microsoft Store cache. I have heard of some people having issues getting the update to actually launch. If that does not work, force the Xbox app on your PCs to close and then sign in again after you relaunch it, and sometimes that will trigger it. And then I have noticed, even myself, I had to manually go to the Microsoft Store, select downloads and updates, and hit check for updates in order to actually get the update to show up. So if you run into that, you might try that as well. I hope this has helped you guys. I hope it has given you some hope. If you have been on the fence about playing, maybe you've stepped away since Sim Update 5, I would recommend coming back for World Update 6 and see if that is something that brings some of the life back into your simulation experience. As always, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you in the next one.